So, welcome to Union Fitness Podcast with your host, Todd Hammer, with the host with the most,
CJ, and our special guest.
We're not going to talk about our producer first. We always say,
No.
and the
He's
man,
in timeout.
the
He
myth,
can go.
the legend,
He can
the
go forth.
timeout,
He can go
the
forth.
Shook Board winner, the Coffee Owen, Josh Alsass, producer of so many fine podcasts.
We'd like to wish him a happy 31st birthday.
TJ, just don't listen to anything these two say.
Oh, we have a guest here too.
They
Sorry.
absolutely
I'm not
drain
here
me
yet.
of
I
my
haven't been
soul.
introduced.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's a large bearded gentleman sitting next to Todd.
And
That's
today
not
on the
CJ.
On the podcast,
It's not CJ.
on the
Not CJ
podcast,
today.
not CJ, TJ Fairchild,
TJ.
owner, operator, CEO, czar, and with the hair like that, samurai,
Yeah, samurai.
of
Yeah.
Samurai.
Secret.
Commonplace
Dojo
Coffee.
master.
First time he's ever been called that. TJ Fairchild, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. And the number of times I've been confused for CJ, I can count on
Right.
one hand.
Right now.
There's one time
Once.
ever.
There it
It's
is.
the hair.
Yeah.
It's the dudes with the crazy hair.
I don't
in
have
this
the
room.
power yet to grow a beard such as that.
Although I have to admit, several times he'd come into the coffee shop, I'd be like, I want to get to know that sexy man.
Yeah.
And now
See? Because
time.
it was my mailman hat, not even my mailman hat, that started our first
It is.
conversation.
You know, I have to tell the story. We adopted a road in the north side to clean. And I picked the road based upon what would get us closest to one of your coffee shops, Commonplace
Shut
Coffee.
up.
Yeah,
Well,
because
since we walked there, it made
I
sense.
said I'm going to get a
And-
coffee and I'll come back on the way
That's
back. I'll
awesome.
pick up
Pick up
garbage.
litter.
It's a double, you
that
know.
is awesome.
And so we have North Taylor Street, one block down.
Oh, man.
We clean it once a week. So we've done it twice so far. The first week we did it, the mailman was there, and
The real mailman.
the real mailman, not CJ.
I'm a poser.
Not Carl Malone. From
Not
the
the person you stole the hat from.
Yeah.
And CJ's girlfriend happens to also be a mail carrier
Oh, no way.
in
Mhm.
Indiana, PA.
Yeah. It's a surprise.
And so he's wearing a hat, and the mailman's there, and the mailman was doing the awkward, like, I see you.
Yeah.
Why you got my hat on, bro?
We didn't give the secret mailman handshake, so he knew I was a phony.
Did you do the Masonic ring hit?
I tipped my hat.
Gave like a Newman thing. He was
Yeah.
like, that's old school stuff.
Old
Seinfeld.
school
Newman.
Seinfeld.
Yeah, he doesn't know that. These guys are.
You're
Yeah.
too young.
Yeah.
I know the funky bass lines.
You will not speak for me. You will not speak for my
Okay, all
Seinfeld
right, well,
references and knowledge.
My 17-year-old is very familiar with Seinfeld.
I like your 17-year-old already.
He's an amazing kid.
But so we've done it twice. The second week, we went on a Friday instead of a Thursday, and we learned that Friday is garbage pickup day.
Yeah, and you
So-
don't want to cross paths with the OG
Yeah,
garbage
it was-
picker-uppers.
Yeah, the OGs of street cleanup.
Yeah.
So we were just
Oh,
picking up
that's
their
interesting.
scraps. It was just picking
Wow.
up what was blowing out of the back of a truck. But we're trying to help
Do they
out.
use the salt spreaders to distribute it more
Right,
evenly?
right.
Yeah, damn it, these guys. So we're trying to just be good neighbors here.
Good
Be
stewards.
Good. It is these Pittsburgh
Stewards
street
of the
stewards.
streets.
Mhm.
That's right, and that's what we're doing. So welcome to the podcast, man.
Thank you so much.
So tell us about yourself a little bit. Start us out. What you got?
It's gonna be
Well,
a long
big
story.
question.
Yeah, right.
I,
Where do we
um,
start?
Obviously don't care about trash as much as you guys. But I do make it a point not to litter from my car when I'm driving back and forth from Pittsburgh to Indiana, Pennsylvania, which is my awkward way of saying I live in Indiana, Pennsylvania, and have a few coffee shops and help other people open coffee shops. I've had 4 meetings already today with people that want to open coffee shops, which is
Whoa.
It's a lot of coffee.
heart-filling.
It seems
Um,
like now's the time to open coffee shops. It's almost on every corner now.
Yeah, is that a bad thing?
No.
Good thing.
I live in the town of coffee shops, Wickley. There's a new one opening there.
Oh, Press House.
Yeah.
They're neighbors of ours a bit. Their original location is on Western.
Okay, I didn't know that. It looks like it's gonna be a cool spot. But I mean, there is now. I think like we have obviously Starbucks is there. Then you have Odessa's there. Crazy Mocha has their last standing store there. Great location.
Crazy Mocha.
The thing with Crazy Mocha is, and I love all their locations, and I don't like their coffee. It's just I just don't, and I try to support them, but I don't enjoy. Of all the coffees I enjoy, theirs I never enjoyed. So, but I still go there because they have a cool location in Swickley.
Crazy Mocha has done a fantastic job at answering neighborhood atmosphere coffee. They have not done an amazing job at appealing to people's palates.
that I can get down with. And a mutual friend of ours, Frank, said similar words to me about them once. He said the owner doesn't even drink coffee. The guy who founded and now has expanded into a new coffee shop.
Right. Yeah, he did sell. You are correct. He didn't drink coffee, and we actually tried a few times to get him to enjoy coffee, and I was always baffled by he doesn't like coffee, tea. I think really all he likes is Pepsi and water. Those two things.
Which is amazing for a coffee shop owner.
But he has sold it. It's under a different owner now, and he he was an amazing guy at creating a cool atmosphere and answering, as I said, in a nice neighborhood spot.
Which I think actually ties well to what we do in gym. I mean, if you create a cool environment, you can probably get away with a lot of They said the coffee wasn't always delicious, but the environment was. So I would always go for the ambiance. I would go because they have cool locations. They always have cool spots. I know there's only one actual storefront left standing other than the ones they have in hospitals. Because, fun fact, CJ, another fun fact. I need a bell for that. Swickley has has two crazy mochas. Did you know that?
One's inside
the
hospital. Computer.
Inside the hospital.
The information
inside the computer.
CJ.
Oh, CJ. No, there's one in the hospital, which is right in front of my house, and then there's one the actual storefront. So I can double up if I really wanted to, but I don't.
Double CM.
I don't worry about it.
But if it's afternoon, it has to be tea.
Tea. Todd's tea.
Have you read the book Caffeinated? I highly recommend it if you haven't.
Caffeinated.
It's the history. It just came out about within the last 5 years. I have it.
Put it on my list.
I can give it to you. It's the history of caffeine, how it's been used through society, and how we get our caffeine.
Yeah, why wouldn't I read that?
It's really interesting, and it obviously delves a good bit into coffee culture, and I think it's pretty interesting because understanding how it works on the human body, and is it good for us? Is it bad for us? Is it in between for us?
I did take a big break similar to you, and we just talked about beer too. I took a break from beer and from coffee over the 2020 pandemic times.
Now, did you still drink caffeine?
I would have caffeine. I'd be fine with caffeine and tea.
Okay.
But primarily I was drinking herbal teas.
Okay. Because
no
that's my concern.
Did you feel much of a difference?
Yeah.
Did it change?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the beer was because I was trying to cut out a lot of sugar. And I was realizing that beer did not make TJ's body feel great.
Sure.
Caffeine, as I was exploring diet, it seemed like I was becoming more sensitive to caffeine. And I was really listening to my body's reaction, and I'd have some kind of shaky reactions to coffee. And then also coffee is so thick. If it's made really well, the total dissolved solids of coffee is really high. So that's also another thing. My palate was changing as I was deleting some things from my diet. So I just found myself not gravitating toward coffee, both for flavor and caffeine. I have reintroduced it. I'm actually on 2 double shots of espresso right now, and I feel wonderful.
Nice.
And I'm glad, but I still haven't introduced beer back, but that was a fun experiment.
Yeah, it's
so
fun.
I can't wait to read this book.
Another book, and it actually was audiobook only, is Michael Pollan.
Right.
And I was lucky enough to meet him twice. Actually.
That's awesome. Yeah, he was in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I had a beer with him.
That's awesome.
It was so intimidating.
Was he here? Was he in this building?
No, this is before I worked here when I was with Robert Morris, and he came to the speaker series, which they hosted. And the 2 times he came, I was able to have a beer with him, and it's intimidating having a beer with a guy like that because you're like, do I order Iron City beer only? Does it have to be something locally sourced? Is Rolling Rock still good?
Man, they're off the chain.
Yeah, I couldn't handle that kind of pressure having beer with Mike. But he wrote a book on caffeine, and he went cold turkey off caffeine for 4 months. And I heard an interview with him on Fresh Air, and he said the day he reintroduced caffeine, he said, I remember, Berkeley, and it was the perfect setting, coffee shop. I ordered a latte, and he said it was the best latte I ever had. And
he just saw rainbows and
he said
chirping.
The sensation, when you go off caffeine and come back to
it,
you realize how strong caffeine is. So
it's amazing.
Average coffee drinker, what are we messing up? What are we doing wrong? What are we not tasting? And I asked that because I used to work at a wine bar, and whenever I drank wine with someone very educated, I was always blown away because they would change the experience for me. Because they would say, hey, wait till the tail end and Do you taste raisins and all of a sudden the raisins hit you, which you wouldn't have got without that?
I get that pretty often in my box wines that I purchase.
That's
So,
funny.
Somehow
Yeah.
you get screw top and box
Yeah.
simultaneously.
Plastic
I don't know how you do
and
that.
wine.
Mad Dog doesn't count as wine.
No.
Just throwing it out there. So what would you say, your average coffee drinker? What are we looking for?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the place I'd like to start is that coffee never gets better than the production method before it. It only is as good as or worse than. So what the soil gives to the coffee, what the processing method gave to the coffee, what the roasting gives to the coffee, all of that is susceptible to user error after the fact. And most importantly, when coffee's brewed. So we look at the parameter of water temperature, 195 to 205. We look at grind size correlation to contact time with water. We look at how that in the brewing method, how the water is agitating or not agitating with the coffee. We look at final temperature of drinking, just as you described with wine. You don't want to taste coffee as soon as coffee is extracted, because coffee is extracted hotter than we can perceive some of the flavors.
Mm-hmm.
Has to do that to get the extraction method, but then to enjoy that coffee to the best, we need to let it cool. And that's one of my favorite things about coffee. Not to get too excited here, but
Oh, I'm excited. Yeah.
That's what you're here for, brother.
Right.
often one of the things that helped me fall in love with coffee, and Todd and I just had a little moment together of thinking we may have crossed paths in one of my early stages of coffee development in Raleigh, North Carolina. When I fell in love with coffee, one of the things, or tea or anything really, that draws people together is that often it's forcing you to calm down, take a breath, and actually be together. And so if we really have this beverage on the table, we extract the flavor or extract the coffee at 200, let's say. We want it to be what, at 140, 130 to really drink it. Guess what? We have to have a conversation now. And I love that. I love that it feels like it's almost like coffee is intending to create connection.
To
with
slow
humans.
down and wait a second.
You're really
Yeah.
getting the inner Michael Pollan on this. I like
Yeah, that's
it.
deep.
Because I've always said, when you have a problem with someone at work, leave work, take them for a beer or coffee, whichever's, beer's not always appropriate, but coffee's always appropriate. And getting someone off of, removing them from the stressor, first off, and then having that moment. And as you said, coffee dictates to us,
Yeah.
to some level, how we drink it, because of the fact that when it's 210 degrees, you can't drink coffee. It's going to burn your mouth. But when it's CJ thinks I have a leather tongue because I get
Yes.
a coffee, I start drinking it. CJ gets a coffee and lets it cool. I mean, he says, you're old, your tongue has turned to leather, you don't taste anything. And it's
Yeah.
quite possibly
Yeah.
true, where I start drinking immediately. He tends to wait.
We did have the toughness test, though, also. Back in RMU days when we would buy coffee, they would give him a sleeve, and I would never use the sleeve. I would just hold on to the cup.
Let it burn his hand.
Nothing more than stupid, but it was
So
still the
his
toughness
hand-
test.
Is
Mine are pretty callousy.
but still he's stronger.
My mental
is
state
stronger.
is
And
tougher.
He's
but
younger.
But his
Todd's tongue is stronger
Yeah.
Yes.
than
So-
CJ's.
Yes.
Poor, poor Erica, I guess. For the kisses. The Valentine's Day kisses.
Heard.
Josh, who's friends with my wife right now,
Is he texting her right now?
is
Yeah.
texting her. And Josh, for the record, is definitely afraid of my wife.
She's like
No
the
retort to that.
Darth
He-
Vader, and he's like the Stormtrooper B5 or whatever.
Oh.
I like
This is
it
by
yesterday,
far
this
the most
reference
bizarre
to-
version
I
of this
think so.
podcast we've ever done. And I really like it when TJ talks, and I wish Todd would talk less, which is exactly how his wife would come across as well.
It's not wrong. Not wrong. All right, so I got
Every
I got
time we rip on each other,
We gotta get
TJ
the-
leans in with big eyes. He's like, "What's going on here?
the
What did
elephant
I
in the room,
sign up
the
for?"
elephant in the room of the coffee world. I got to touch on. And I remember I saw an interview with it might have been Howard Schultz, but someone from Starbucks. Starbucks blew up, and there's one on every corner. And someone said to him, "Your coffee's too bitter." I think it was on 60 Minutes, and they had their tasting professional, and they have a guy that does every job, or a girl, or whatever, someone that does every job. And he said, our coffee's not bitter. You're not. And he explained why. Is Starbucks coffee bitter?
Bitter.
Yeah.
That might be one of the most difficult words in the coffee
I like this answer already.
world to answer, because, and just as you guys described, Todd and CJ, about when you can even start drinking coffee, we're all, I mean, unique, special little creatures. So bitter to one creature might be bitter to another creature. There is some objectivity to bitterness.
Mm-hmm.
In that objectivity, you have to say, if you have a really dark chocolate, a great glass of wine, a delicious beer, a delicious coffee, there are going to have to be some bitters in there for us to appreciate some of the elements of flavor. So sometimes people might mean sour with bitter. Sometimes people might mean under extracted with bitter. It's really hard to get at, but in the common kind of reaction, Starbucks is bitter in the sense of they intentionally roast coffee a bit darker than the average coffee shop. It's a nice little nod to kind of the McDonaldization, homogenization. We're trying to get at a consistent flavor, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm Starbucks, and one of the ways that you can get at a consistent flavor is roast out individual flavors by over roasting coffee. And that, I'm using a term pejoratively, over roast. I don't really mean that. I mean roasted darker.
Yeah.
So if I have a low grade coffee, a real nice trick I would do is I would roast it dark to take out some of the subtleties of that not delicious part of the coffee. And that way it would taste like coffee, not like its bad cup qualities, right? Starbucks is guilty of that. Not saying at all Starbucks is bad. Starbucks is doing the wrong thing. That's just what they do. And so some of those heavier roasted tones that come out in roasting at a higher temperature and longer can be perceived bitterness for sure. You're caramelizing sugars at the front end of that darker roast, but then you're also turning some of those aromas into carbon, really, instead of just caramelizing sugars. And some of that carbon flavor note will come through as bitter.
So
for sure.
And I'm probably going to misuse this word, and correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, Commonplace, I enjoy your coffee. It almost has a bit of a nuttier flavor. Am I missing something? Or
No, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, just by nature, some of those nuttier tones are going to come out because we are not roasting as dark.
Okay.
As a company like Starbucks. We're not roasting as light as to get like super like acidic floral and citrus tones, but yeah, the nuttiness in there, we're kind of a light to medium roaster, and nuttiness is definitely going to be in those zones for sure.
So look at it. I know.
Yeah, that's a good word.
I feel like I hit a home run on that one. Like
you did a great job.
We kind of cut you off on your introduction, so maybe we can dive back into it and ask this question. Before you started Commonplace, were you like, man, I am gonna be the king of coffee and just dominate and do this and help people out? Or what were you doing? What were you doing back then?
No, I actually am a little sad Commonplace has gotten this big, but I don't regret it, but I'm a little sad in the sense that I'm not an entrepreneur. Obviously I am, but I'm not like a business guy. I studied philosophy. I actually went to seminary too as part of my evolution in life, whatever you'd call it. Coffee was accidental, or coffee business was accidental. Coffee was definitely a big part of my life. We moved to Western Pennsylvania to start Commonplace, and in reaction to that, people loved it. People were so supportive, and the business grew. We celebrated 18 years in March, and we have, I can't believe it. It feels a little weird saying it. We have 8 coffee shops, a bakery, a production roastery, and I get to help people open coffee shops. I mean, that was not a part of the original design, but it's worked.
So I want to open a coffee shop. I basically contract you to help me to walk me through the steps, and that's what you do on the side, or not on the side, but that's part of what Commonplace does.
Yeah, it's almost my full-time job now. I'm like, I don't get behind the bar too much. I gave up roasting. I gave up the paychecks. You know, we have a company now that you do it through your smartphone with your employees. It's crazy. You know, I used to love handing out paychecks every other Friday.
Hey, I'm the money guy. You like me now. Yeah.
It was so fun. I remember I used to stack them up on my car and I'd drive to the stores and hand them. And I'd sometimes put it on a social media, whatever was cool in that moment. Twitter, I don't know what's not cool now. Facebook,
Yeah, right.
That's what's
MySpace,
not cool.
Maybe.
MySpace, that's what
Yeah.
I would do it on.
Yeah.
But
Top
so yeah,
friends.
now my full-time job, and we had someone up from Miami 2 weeks ago that came to Pittsburgh. He's got 5 stores, been open 11 years, but just wanted some help from us. We're doing the same thing starting Monday with a shop that has 5 years under their belt and they want to expand their business. I'm going to help them do that. The 4 meetings that I've had today are folks that have never even made a coffee in their life, and they want to know, is this for us? So I'm going to help walk them through. What is the financial picture? What's the return on investment? What is this going to look like for your daily life? Are you okay with being really tired and being on your feet all day? You know, those kind of questions. And some move forward and some say, this might not be for me.
So when the job before I had this job I was at George Washington University, right in the center of DC. And the best coffee in DC was Sammy's Coffee Cart.
Sammy's.
He had a cart. Sat right on Virginia and 23rd. I forget, 23rd and
That's
something.
awesome.
And Sammy, this guy, he pulled up his cart every day. I mean, his cart was a trailer, and he made from about 9 till about 3. You know, you might catch him a little earlier, might catch him a little later, depending on the day. And he parked.
Is Frank listening from Odessa? Maybe he could take some pointers on expanding his hours.
I actually tried to get Sammy to come here and set up shop one day.
Oh,
Not to compete with
cool.
Commonplace, but have a little fun. And
That'd be awesome.
The problem is he drops this cart off. He keeps it stored in Anacostia. And he has this little Toyota pickup truck with like 890,000 miles.
Oh,
Some
that's
absurd.
awesome.
And he's like, it's not going to make it to DC, man.
It'll fall
And
apart.
it was
Duct
the
tape.
best. And finally I said, where do you get your coffee from? He goes, Swings Coffee Shop. I said, yeah, Swings, there's a few in the DC area. And he said, that's their coffee. But I would go to Swings and pay $4.50 for my cup of coffee. I'd go to Sammy and spend $2.50, and Sammy's was better.
Whoa.
Yeah,
That's a fantastic
I don't know why.
thought
How do you
exercise.
think he did that?
Yeah, what
Do you
did
think
Sammy
he-
do
did he have
different?
special machines or just more love?
And we need to get Sammy on here
You
so
know,
you get a rebuttal.
There's a few things I don't want to forget to mention. One, I want to go back to wine. This is probably one of my favorite things to talk about flavor experiences is context can totally adjust your palate.
So you're saying
So you're
me and
walking
Sammy
down
were
the
cool.
street, either Sammy or where you were, what you're doing that part of your day versus when you're at swings.
Swings.
I think that has like so much to do. I mean, I've had an amazing day with my family, right? Like all the things I love to do. And we go to like the worst coffee shop ever on vacation, and sipping that coffee at the end of the day or first thing in the morning, whatever it is, that can taste like the best cup of coffee I've ever
It
had.
just hits right in the moment. Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, it is.
I mean, there is objectivity to taste. I'm not saying there isn't, but so much of like our headspace can be affected. Like, when you're on vacation, you're like, man, I really want a convertible. And then you get home and you buy a convertible and it's like, it's not as fun
Not as
as
cool.
when I was
Yeah.
on vacation.
This
me,
Pittsburgh weather doesn't hold up to convertible life.
I'm not a huge iced coffee guy, but when in Key West, I love it. Like
There you go.
I sit there and drink my iced
Isn't that
coffee.
crazy?
And so I think and
Or who you're with,
yeah.
Well,
I was with my wife, so is that good, Josh? Okay, he shook his head yes.
No, I just
Because
mean,
I was
yeah.
gonna text her and say Josh says it's not, and then he'd be in trouble at work because they work together too, at their full-time jobs. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
believe that. Yeah, it's rough. But yeah, I mean, and not to harp on this, and because I mentioned him a couple times, but to me, that's so much that runs on that Michael Pollan, who
Yeah.
is such a mentor to me, of whether it be food, whether it be coffee, whether it be wine. When you break bread with someone, when you spend that moment with someone,
It's
there's more
amazing.
than just the food to the moment.
Totally.
And something I think we've lost in our culture, and
Oh,
we
for
need to bring
sure.
back is sharing food with other humans. I love And hopefully after COVID, we all come by my house and sit on the deck and
Oh,
share food together.
that is absolutely
not really on topic, but so when Skylar and I go out to eat, back in the day, I would order a plate. My mom would order a plate. My family would order individual plates, and we would just eat because that's how I was raised and that's what I see everyone else doing. But now, when I go with friends and family, we order multiple and we share food like that, and I think it's a totally different experience that it enhances your time together, the meal and
have you been to
experience.
an Ethiopian restaurant?
Yeah,
that's the best.
There's
When
one
they
in
bring
East.
out
That's
the bread,
exactly that's exactly what I was thinking about when he said that. Is like, wish we could all eat with no utensils, recline, put things in other things, dips, chips, whatever, and we're all doing it together.
Way before CV.
Not pandemic.
But
Let's
get our shots and do it.
Yeah.
That's been one of the hardest parts of the pandemic for me.
Yeah.
Is I don't love anything more than sitting with people and drinking and eating. Like that's just the most beautiful part of my life. That's where moments that I remember about my best friends and moments where I learned things, growth. I mean, just it's beautiful.
Yeah. And it's funny, as lifters, I actually think lifting fills that hole for us right now. Because when you're in there training, 2 Fridays ago, I think the entire staff was training at the same time.
Yeah, it was awesome.
The entire staff.
The gym was pretty down, so we all trained together.
To me, that same type of moment. We're all in it.
That's interesting.
And as you said, everyone's palate's a little different.
So that's communal.
Yes.
Lifting together is communal.
100%.
Oh man.
And that's why
I'm missing out.
I rant.
I lift by myself sometimes, but it's not the same. Like sometimes Hammer and I lift, or Curtis and I lift, or Skylar and I lift, but it just ups the level of either enjoyment,
endorphins,
excitement. You'll no doubt lift 5 to 10 more pounds more than you would by yourself, I'm sure, because you have more confidence. You're excited. You want to compete.
Impress her.
Right? Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
You want to flex off more.
Is that what it's called? Flex off?
I make up words all the time.
Okay.
And we just roll with it. So
I'm gonna try to bring flex off with in the coffee world and see what our equivalent is.
Hey, please
is it
enjoy.
latte art or is it?
Yeah, you like drizzle it off and say, "Here's my flex off for you."
So I need to know this. I French press my coffee every morning. I heat my water, I grind my beans, I pour my beans into my French press. I put the water in there, let it sit for a couple minutes, and I get a little stir just to break up the top.
You agitate, nice.
Yeah, just well, I mainly do it because it's a pain in the ass to get the French press down.
Without
so I stirred it. Yeah, because it kind of clogs up. And then I actually use like a little filter before I pour it into the like one of those like a strainer, just in case there were any
metal as well or paper.
No, it's like reusable, like hard paper, like a
mesh.
Yeah, it's like a mesh.
Yeah.
And I pour it through there into my thing, and I drink it. What am I doing wrong? What can I do to make my experience better?
Wow, where do I start? No, I'm just kidding.
You are so wrong, man. I don't use a Keurig because Keurigs are disgusting.
I love that you're straining it, though. I mean, that's fascinating. So French press is a what would you say, like a
I just say yummy.
Peloton of fitness, of coffee.
I'm done French pressing. I'm out. I'm done.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Man.
I don't even know what the equivalent is. What was the thing with rubber bands?
Bowflex.
It's the Bowflex.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. But seriously, French press is kind of mocked in third wave specialty coffee. It is not mocked by TJ, nor by the scientists really, because the reason it's mocked is because French press focuses more on the body of the experience of coffee and less on flavor nuance. And as we're trying to like chase terroir and what the soil has to give to the coffee, we're trying so hard to get at the root of what that coffee has to give us. And French press can literally, because it does have, and I don't mean literal in the hipster way, like literal as in the literal way, it literally has more material in it. So in bringing more material to the cup, you lose the nuance and you get more of the body characteristics.
Yeah, it's gritty. It's almost gritty.
Which is amazing because you're filtering some of that. So the point is really the French press is a brew method to be celebrated for the person that wants body over flavor clarity, or Maybe there's a coffee that you have that you're like, this is not going to be the most nuanced cup. It's going to be more of a hearty, thicker, richer coffee. I think I might want to French press that, right? So don't mock it. Leave it as a brewer on the continuum. And on the opposite end of the continuum, you can use a brewer that will enhance flavor clarity over body, or you can get a number of different devices that can get in the middle.
So if your average Joe in the coffee world.
Wait, average Joe
Average
cup
Joe.
or
Cup of
average
Joe.
Joseph?
I walked into a Starbucks one time. I said, "Can I just get a cup of Joe?" And she stared at me. She didn't know what it meant.
My favorite thing at Starbucks is to order a small. And when they say, because I'm usually like on the interstate and I'm like in a drive-through, could I have a small
Breezewood.
coffee? Sure, one tall coffee. No, I said small.
Yeah.
Oh, tall, that'll be a tall. And then when they hand it, and they're like, tall coffee, I'm like, I didn't order a tall. Could I get a small?
I get a small.
And then you hand me your business card. You know who I am.
No. I only did that once and my wife told me to stop.
Knock it off.
She said that they open drive-throughs for efficiency, not for me.
Yeah.
I don't know what that meant.
I actually have a rule in life, and I think you'll dig this. I will not do drive-thrus ever.
Are you serious?
Won't do it. I want to have human interactions. So I go into stores.
Oh my goodness, dude! Do you know how much that means to me? I remember
I
when
thought
I
you
was
dig that.
Todd. All right, I love you for a lot of reasons right now, but this is the best one.
Josh is so
I
mad you said that.
remember when I was a little kid, and I'm not that old, but I remember when you started paying at the pump with the gas station, and I remember having the conscious thought, what about that person in there that I can
Hey,
see in the
Dave.
glass? What are they doing now?
Nothing.
And when do we skip that? And then I also remember when ATMs, and we didn't have to go and interact with a teller anymore. That like broke my heart as a kid. I think I might be with you on the drive-through thing. Although some people or some places like drive-through cleaner, how would you get your shirt?
There's like some
There's
Dunkin'
cleaners.
Donuts now, or Dunkin' now. It's just straight.
Yeah,
Dunkin'
no
drive-thru.
donuts.
Yeah, first off, I'm gonna say it. Their coffee is the worst. It's bad. I can't do it. I've tried it. I know people like it. I understand why people in college like it because they can get 8 sugars and it's sweet. And the thing with coffee is every college student starts out with that super sweet because it's an acquired taste and you adapt. And to me, and you touched on it, over time it should change. And I think something that, again, in our culture we lose is people don't accept that change as readily.
Mm.
In other words, if you have
We don't allow the pivot.
yes,
Yeah.
you had the coffee with 8 sugars, cut it to 7, cut it to 6, and then
Right.
eventually, it's funny. I like just a touch of cream and a touch of sugar, and I'm talking about a touch. And I always say, it's just a little sugar in it. No matter where I go, it's like,
It's
just too much.
Yeah.
I just want to just break it a little. You
Maybe
know?
people are scared too to try like Commonplace and Adesso because like, well, I know Dunkin' and I know Starbucks and maybe Crazy Mocha and like I don't know them.
Yeah, and
I'm scared
but
to
that's
try
what you talk
them
about with Starbucks. You
Yeah.
know what you're gonna get
Right.
every time, and it's my McDonald's theory. Does the McDonald's hamburger taste good? In my opinion, no, I don't think so. But you know what you're getting. There's not gonna be a question. If you want a good burger, you're not gonna go to McDonald's. But 100% in that when you look at those big chains, people want to know what they're getting. I want discovery. I want to go
right.
and say, oh, Commonplace, it is nuttier than those big chains. And the first time it hit me, I went, oh, that's different.
Isn't that correlated to with what you're saying with drive-thrus? To have food slower, isn't that kind of a similar
Absolutely.
concept?
And it is, how familiar you are with the slow food movement.
Yeah, totally.
But to me, I think the slow food movement can do a lot for the world. When
Right.
people sit down, prepare their food. I cook all our food in our home, mainly because my wife would burn the house down. She is a lovely woman. We've talked about her here. But she cannot cook. I mean, I remember one time, we, not vegetarians in our house, we don't have a lot of meat. And this was years ago, and she bought a thing of like frozen scallops or something. And she cooked a thing of pasta and was like, oh, I'm going to put there some garlic and butter. Doesn't sound too bad. And she cooked all the pasta and then dumped the raw fish in the pasta, assuming it would just cook itself in there. It's hot.
Yeah, right.
I was like, no, you actually have to cook the food prior to putting it. Just because something is hot doesn't mean it's going to cook the other thing. And she didn't quite fully grasp that concept.
Oh.
And that's why I said, you clean, I'll cook, we're good.
Oh, interesting.
So I enjoy a half hour, 45 minutes every night, sitting down, chopping the garlic.
Again, it's an
Nice.
experience thing
the
too.
therapy of that
Yeah.
and the
Yes.
experience. slowing down, human interaction. I love, as much as I love sitting down to eat together, I love everybody, all hands on deck in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
Just
Sometimes I
helping each other
enjoy
out.
it more than the eating part.
Totally. Which
You know?
is so weird to me. Like, I feel like I reached a level of maturity I hadn't had before when I realized that preparation was as much fun as the enjoyment.
Yeah. And then seeing other people enjoy the food is like,
Oh, that you made?
this is cool.
Like that great salsa?
Yeah. We're coming back.
Bringing it back. The salsa's
Farmers
coming back.
markets are coming. We're going to look into actually getting something to make sure people say, hey, you can eat this and not be afraid of it.
That's another good Seinfeld reference, right? The salsa and the seltzer.
Salsa and seltzer.
Oh,
Seltzer,
so I don't know
seltzer.
that one. I'm not that deep cut.
No?
Sorry.
Yeah, that one? Josh got it. Well, one big piece of advice you have. I mean, obviously you said it, you know, you didn't set out to set the world on fire and open 8 stores and do all the things you did. But, you know, what advice for us, for everyone out there about how to be successful?
Yeah, I always struggle with answering that question. Not that I get it a lot, but once every 10 years, someone asks me that. And, you know,
return to land once every 10 years.
The hard part is I don't think I did it the right way, but I did. One thing that I really love about what Commonplace has done is that it's been very slow in its growth. Even though I didn't plan this, there has been growth. It's been slow. It's been organic and responding to opportunities. We're just now, after 18 years, starting to kind of plan and forecast and project and even like look at neighborhoods. We've never done that before. Every time we've opened a store, there's been a reason someone's come to us and invited. So, you know, how do you interpret that for someone else's life? I mean, obviously don't push it, you know, don't try to make something work that's obviously not going to work. You know, I love following passion, but as much as passion, also finding a need. And I think, you know, we talk about community and slowing down and being together. I think there's no better place to do that than a coffee shop or some kind of food and beverage industry. And now I'm learning that can happen at the gym as well. So finding like that niche of how you can contribute to your community and leveraging that at some level authentically and organically.
If I can be so bold, I'm gonna assume something here. One of the guys who I like to follow on social media is Dan Price. You know Dan Price.
No.
He owns a multi-million-dollar business in Seattle.
Okay.
And he's the guy who a few years back was talking to an employee and said, "How you doing, man?" The guy said, "I'm terrible." He said, "What's going on?" Rent's due, and tell him all his problems. And the CEO's making $10 million a year, and the guy makes $35,000. And he went home and started thinking about his life and said, "You know what? I'm setting a new minimum salary. Everyone in my company makes 70 grand. Now, I mean, this company makes 20 million, you know, whatever." And he started, every person then went to $70,000 a year. He took his own salary down to $70,000. So I don't need it.
Oh, I remember reading about that. Yeah.
And I like, and it reminds me of that because I think one thing you didn't mention, but I believe just from this conversation is you're taking care of your people. You know, you love to drop the paychecks off to people.
Goodness.
Like the little things, having a beer with people, which we do quite often here, like, hey, taking a walk together and cleaning the streets together, but knowing that you're a team. You might be the captain of the team, but it's a team. And without your people, without Frank taking care of the coffee shop here in the War Streets,
Yeah.
you know, Frank, why did I go there as much as I did and start going there? Because it was a friendly face.
Yep,
It was a
good
guy,
experience.
you know, even his blog, you know, people come up and like, I just read his blog on your website. It's like, people come up with good news, bad news, and everything in between. And no
Yeah.
different than a gym or a coffee shop. Frank's like, "Oh man, tell me about it. How are things?" You know,
Absolutely.
that moment.
It's funny that you bring that up. Like, I remember in the early stages of Commonplace thinking about how I loved people more than coffee, right? And my brain was like overwhelmed by the guest experience as people. And probably because we didn't have employees when we opened, right? But I remember having a conscious thought about a year or two into Commonplace and thinking, if I love people, doesn't that include people behind the bar? And that has been an absolutely crucial part of what Commonplace has done. Obviously, it could not exist without more people than myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have 10 projects active almost every day of the week, and I have a manager for each project. I could not do this on my own, obviously. that's extended even into thinking about, how do I love people that are our vendors? How do I love people that are our coffee farmers? How do I love every person that interacts with this industry? But your point is beautiful about employees. This business is what it is because of the people that work with us.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's a great way to wrap it up, and because it says everything that anyone who's ever a quote unquote boss has to understand, is that me and CJ have worked together far too many times. And when I got here, we had a full-time position open, and I remember the conversation like, you have to interview for it because I want to go through the process.
Yeah.
But there was no doubt in my mind at the end of the day that he was going to end up with the position. And you find the people, you say, hey, I trust this person, I respect this person, they trust and respect me, we're going to do some big things.
That's lovely.
And whether it be the meeting we have tomorrow with Commonplace, the meeting we had with Wiggle Whiskey yesterday, whatever it is, we're going to try to change the north side one push-up at a time. You can do
awesome.
1 cup of coffee at a time.
Here we go.
Well, man, thank you for coming on with us today.
This has been so
awesome.
fun.
You got any nice tidbits for us? Anything you want to ask us before you dip off into your coffee world?
Man, I'm so excited to lift something here. Can I lift something before I leave?
No, you can lift everything.
Yeah, probably everything.
Can you tell me how to do a push-up right?
Absolutely.
Correctly?
Yeah. Well or good.
Well, yeah, good enough. It's like coffee. There's different tastes, That was a okay tasting push-up,
Do you have to rest so your muscles aren't too hot to taste them before you do a push-up?
I try to rest as much as possible when I'm training. You can ask CJ.
I like to get as sweaty as possible, so I like to increase the temperature while I work out.
He's younger than me, so
Yeah.
We don't need a sleeve to hug him.
No. Safe.
That was good.
No sleeves.
Well, on that note, TJ, thank you for being on today. Hey, thank you to our producer, even though he's shook every day. Shooky McShook.
Josh was my favorite part of this process.
He's holding up a note right now that says, I hate Hammer and CJ.
Yeah.
Thank you, Charles D. Jasper.
Yeah,
Edward
you know.
Jasper. We share a middle name. And thank you, TJ, for joining us today.
Thank you guys. This was lovely.
All right. Catch you next week, everyone.
Adios.